Welcome to Puddle of Porridge, where we will be looking at whatever's grabbed my attention, and where you like, share, and subscribe. Right now, massively multiplayer games, or MMORPGs, have my attention. I love MMORPGs. The idea of playing alongside other players, or against other players, has always appealed to me. And recently I realized I've never really touched one of the biggest ones of these games. World of Warcraft. For those who don't know, which may be exactly one of you, World of Warcraft, or WoW, is a game set in the fantasy world of Azeroth, with the narrative focused on an ongoing war between two factions, the Horde and the Alliance. These factions are composed of fantasy people like elves, dwarves, and orcs, with a few extras thrown in for flavour. It also has a free trial, one of which that takes you up to level 20, which is quite short for an MMO trial, but it's what we have to work with. In my time playing WoW, I've played through several starting areas, including Exile's Reach, the newer, streamlined starting area designed to bring new players like myself into the game. I played two characters to the intended level 20 after completing this starting zone, one on Horde, one on Alliance. No favoritism here. I also played through several of the classic starting areas, which spat me out just a few levels under 20, usually around 17 or 18. Accessibility. After making a character, the first thing I typically look at in a game is its accessibility options. World of Warcraft's accessibility options are incredibly customizable and diverse. I was actually really surprised. There's options for colorblindness, adjustable cursor sizes, even a text-speech capability. This is on top of very basic things you see in other games like subtitles. And it's only listing a few. Where the game seems to let itself down is in what I like to call the financial accessibility, aka how easy it is to actually get into what the game has to offer. World of Warcraft requires a subscription to play. In the UK, that sets you back £9.99 a month, with discounts for pre-purchasing long periods of time. This is fairly standard. But in addition, you have to pay for the latest expansion pack if you want to move to where the player base is. Plus, there's an in-game store, and you're incentivized to use the in-game store, especially as a trial player, although many store options are blocked off as a trial player because you are limited to level 20. It seems to be somewhat assumed that you are going to purchase the level booster when you become a full subscriber, which will set you back £49 on top of your subscription. This obviously makes this game a bit of a mixed bag because on one hand there's a fair bit on the financial side of things getting in the way of actually giving this game a try for an extended period of time. At least we're not without a suitable incentive. On the other hand, the game has very robust options for gamers with disabilities, which is only ever a good thing. Classes and customization. When creating a character in WoW, you must first choose your race. Your race determines what classes are available to you. Playable races are split between factions. Orcs, trolls, goblins are aligned with the Horde, dwarves, humans, gnomes aligned with the Alliance. both alliances have completely original races too, like the Tauren for the Horde, and the panda-based Pandarians, which can be played by either faction. The classes themselves take on the traditional RPG holy trinity of tank, healer, and damage. For the most part, it's a fairly standard affair. Warriors can tank, clerics can heal, sorcerers do damage, etc. Every race has access to warrior, priest, rogue, hunter, and the mage class, with other classes like warlock and druid being locked behind certain races. Once again, WoW has its own take on more exotic classes like the Death Knight and the Demon Hunter. Although personally, I find locking classes behind races to be somewhat arbitrary, I must say it was pretty easy to find a combo that I could gel with. Gameplay. WoW is a traditional tab-targeted MMORPG, and it comes with all the pros and all the cons of that style of play. Learning your rotations is the key to success in this kind of game, so knowing your class is of utmost importance. WoW defined what many MMORPGs strive for in the gaming space with this style, and if it's not broke, don't fix it. There's a reason why WoW clone is a popular term. My only issue with this format, and in particular with how WoW delivers it, is that it ultimately pushes for damage in casual play over healing and tanking, which can make the jump from solo play much more difficult. This is, of course, to encourage players to find a group, but in my 1 to 20 experience, I never actually had the opportunity to group with anyone. No one really wanted to do it. I found this to be further inflated by quest lines that came about later. They contained a lot of exciting instance moments, like jumping on a horse or taking control of a turret. These usually came in the form of the end of certain quest chains, and although were very flashy, they pulled me straight out of the gameplay loop, and they happen quite often. So all these abilities that I'm trying to learn how to use, I'm spending a good chunk of my time just not using them. In most games, this isn't really an issue, at least most modern games, but I found this happening a lot even in this 1 to 20 gaming experience. Like I wasn't really using what my class had to offer. Story. The story of WoW is wrapped up in its setting, so the quality of the story depends on what era you're delving into. In my case, I played the most recent content that was available to me. So I played the new starting area, and then I moved on to simply following where the quests pointed me to. The quests that I played were delivered largely through text blocks, but I had a few instances of very well performed and really entertaining voice acting, as well as the odd animated cutscene, which were really impressive. The immediate story that I was portrayed was delivered in a diverse enough way that I never got too bored. Just when I thought I was zoning out from reading too many text boxes, I'd have a cutscene, or bam, there'd be a nice little voice acting segment in the middle. It really kept me engaged. It's nothing groundbreaking, but it was just enough. However, this is only the latest content, and I should note you don't actually have to follow the latest content while engaging in the trial, and by extension in the game. You can go back and play the older segments. These have a little bit less polish depending on when you play. The further back you go, the less polish there is, less voice acting, less cutscenes, more repetitive quests. But it is nice to know the older content is still there. But regardless of where the story points, There seems to be a general theme of you will go off and you will fight the biggest threat to the world right now. This big threat might be the Horde versus the Alliance, or it's the latest big bad doing the big bad dastardly thing. Community. Of course, you won't be doing any of this stuff alone. You'll be doing it with other players. WoW is a very, very active player base and a really big one. However, most of the active community is siphoned towards the end game, structured content, which can make a leveling experience quite lonely. Which is weird because I always saw people around, but no one seemed particularly keen to come and party up. This may have been a me problem, as I'm sure the community is quite active, and I've been told guilds are often very active and the predominant way that people will group up. But for the pug questing content, it was pretty barren, I'm afraid. Closing thoughts. WoW is a very interesting MMO. At least it's interesting in its trial form. It has a wealth of abilities, but it spends a lot of its time on turret sections. Its community is active and plentiful, but at least in my experience, it was quite lonely. There's clearly a lot of money and talent in this game, but you don't see the benefit of it unless you're playing the most recent content, which really hits home if you go back and play a lot of the older content, which has aged a lot less gracefully. It's a game of these huge polar dynamics. Really interesting content here, really old and bland here. Very active, questing alone. Lots of cool abilities and lots of cool classes. Spends a lot of its time not using them. It's far from a bad game, but it's not quite there in the modern gaming space where other games have come about and stepped up and done what World of Warcraft, even in its more modern content, is trying to do and doing it better. And this is where I gave World of Warcraft its rating. And here, because this is our first video, we don't give a number rating here. Instead, we give a food rating. And I give World of Warcraft a rating of a slice of toast. Thanks for watching. I just wanted to add a little bit of an end slate because I don't have a Patreon or anywhere to send people right now. But I still have a couple more thoughts. You see, I did this script for this video fairly blind. Didn't look up anything to do with World of Warcraft before starting. So this last bit is a little bit of an end slate. It's going to be unscripted. And I just wanted to clear up some things because after doing it, I decided to go off, fill in the blanks of my knowledge, the questions that were burning in my brain. Spoke to some World of Warcraft players that I knew, watched some videos of other people's first impressions of the game, and they were actually very helpful because they did the research as they went, as opposed to me. I wanted to get that raw, blind experience. And I kind of want to not correct things that I've said, but more add clarity to them in this little end section. So I come off as quite negative, and I'm probably going to change that for future videos and rewriting some of my scripts for the next few impressions videos to sound less negative. That wasn't really intentional. I just kind of felt that WoW's reputation had reached me before my experience, and that really put a cloud over the negativities. I noticed them a lot more because everything I'd heard prior was largely positive. So WoW is definitely not a bad game. It's just really, I was going to say flawed, but it's really stuck in its time. It's not quite up to par with a lot of more modern experiences in the MMO genre. I spoke a lot about turret sections. Uh, I really felt like I should clarify on that here, in that when I said turret sections, I kind of meant anything that draws your control away from your character. They don't always appear as a turret section, though that was the most common version of this that I found. And it mostly occurred on the Alliance side. The Horde side of the quest lines tended to take these sections in more unique ways, like racing sections, um, maybe transforming you into like a weird contraption, stuff like that. Whereas the Alliance was very much here's a literal turret section every time. I didn't really like it when the game did this in general, as I was still learning the controls in that 1 to 20 experience. I was learning my rotation, but it is what it is. The turrets were a lot more prevalent in the Alliance side. While I'm on the Alliance side, I actually found the community to be a lot more um, a lot less anyway, beginner friendly. I was going to say a lot more hostile, but I don't think they were hostile, just a lot less beginner friendly. I found that people on Horde were much more open, which was weird because I would have expected it to be the other way around, because Alliance seems to be set up to be the goodies, and the Horde seems to be set up to be the baddies, at least playing through the intro sections that I played through. I know there's a little bit of grey area there, but it was weird that my experience playing as the Horde, both with the way their quests were paced and how the community was a far more positive experience. I think if I would have just played the Horde, I'd probably have a lot more good to say and a lot less overt criticisms of the game in general. Uh, Speaking to WoW players that I know, they actually don't seem to like what the free trial has to offer. They don't like the path you're pushed down, which I thought was odd. I quite enjoyed it. I like the beginner island. I like the quality of the story that was told, at least the portion of the story that we have access to. Though we can keep playing after level 20, there's not really much point because you're not really making any progress towards your character and thus towards endgame, which is also what my WoW friends seem to point out. Like, why would you keep playing through the story if you're not leveling? Because you're going to have to find an alternate leveling route through questing through older content. It strikes me as a little bit weird that what the community seems to not like about the game is what Blizzard wants you to engage with. It strikes me as odd. I also played on a new player server. Apparently, this was the wrong thing to do. From the research that I've done after the video and from speaking to my World of Warcraft friends, I shouldn't have picked new player server as a new player, as these are much less populated and probably helped skew my opinion towards WoW feeling like no one wants to help out, as the people running around were probably new and probably were just as lost as I was, and the far more knowledgeable players or players more inclined to help as opposed to expect help, like myself, were on other servers just playing with guilds and things like that. So, yeah, that's just a cap off to my opinions. Uh, Definitely don't think this was a bad game. Um, but it really is. I do stand by it showing its age. Like, this is a lot of very classic MMO stuff, and this game wrote the book on what modern MMO stuff is supposed to be like, what a lot of games emulate. So I do get that. So once again, thanks for watching. If you've listened right up to the end of this little end slate, which I'm looking at the timer has gone on for a fair bit, thank you very much. Uh, if you could like this video, share this video, maybe drop me a little subscription because there is other videos coming up. It would be a great big help. Thank you so much for watching. You have a beautiful day now.